What if the oldest resident of your city isn't human, but something that remembers everything you've forgotten? In a forgotten corner of the city, there stands a tree older than every building, older than every name. It's seen wars, love stories, births, and disappearances, and lately, it's been trying to speak again. When one man decided to listen, he didn't just find roots. He uncovered a memory that was never supposed to wake. Stay till the end, because what this tree whispered before it went silent forever will change the way you look at every living thing around you. The city was louder than ever that night. Cars hissed over wet asphalt, neon lights trembled in puddles, and high above it all, the wind moved like a tired ghost through the broken skyline. In a forgotten corner of the old district, where new towers gave way to crumbling brick, stood a tree. No one knew its exact age. Some said it was as old as the first settlement. Others swore it had been planted by monks who vanished centuries ago. Its bark was thick, cracked like burnt parchment, and beneath it, shadows seemed to breathe. Dr. Ian Mir stood beneath that ancient trunk, clutching a small recorder. His colleagues at the university called him the man who listens to trees. He didn't mind. He'd spent years studying the acoustic signatures of old forests, convinced that trees, in their slow and silent way, spoke, if one only knew how to listen. But tonight was different. Tonight, he wasn't in a forest. He was in the middle of a city that had forgotten how to breathe. The recorder blinked red. Static. Wind. The low hum of traffic in the distance. And then, a faint sound, buried deep within the noise, like something shifting, whispering. Ayan adjusted the mic. Repeat that, he murmured, as if the tree could hear him. The whisper came again, softer now, a tremor that didn't belong to any machine. It almost resembled a voice. A child's, maybe. A laugh cut in half. He froze. Impossible, he whispered to himself. And then he heard it. The flutter of wings. A small sparrow landed on a broken metal railing beside him. Its feathers were dull gold, streaked with ash. Its eyes, sharp, knowing, unnervingly still, locked onto his. Hey there, Ayan said softly, easing closer. You shouldn't be out this late. The sparrow tilted its head, as though amused. It hopped once, twice, then fluttered onto the bark of the old tree, pressing its beak into a narrow crack. Something about the gesture unsettled him. It wasn't feeding or resting. It was almost listening. A sudden gust swept the street, carrying the faintest sound. The creak of old wood, the sigh of something alive but ancient. Ayan pressed his palm against the trunk. It was warm, as if warning him to stop. But the warmth beneath his palm deepened, pulsing. For a heartbeat, he could swear he felt something move inside the wood. Then, a whisper, unmistakable now. You came back. He stumbled backward, nearly dropping the recorder. What the hell? The sparrow shrieked, wings flaring wide, circling him once before vanishing into the dark. The sound stopped. The warmth faded. The tree was silent again. For a moment, the city's chaos returned. The honks, the sirens, the faraway hum of electric life. But Ayan just stood there, staring at that ancient trunk, the echo of the words still trembling in his mind. You came back. He played the recording back in his earphones. At first, nothing but wind, then faint static. And then, yes, it was there. A voice. Female. Fragile. You came back. He didn't sleep that night. Back in his apartment, surrounded by stacks of data sheets and audio files, Ayan replayed the sound over and over. He checked the spectrogram, frequencies between 1.3 and 2.1 kilohertz. Not wind, not insects. Human range frequencies. But how? He cross-referenced his previous recordings of that same tree. The earliest one, 3 months ago, had a faint hum, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat, but never words. Never this. He jotted notes. 2213, whisper detected. Female tone, approx. 8 to 10 years old. Subject, tree reacts to touch. Thermal anomaly. Witness, one sparrow gold ash plumage. Possible behavioral link. And then he stopped writing. because he realized his hand was shaking. The next morning, the sky was the color of ash. He returned to the site. The old district was waking up, vendors setting up their stalls, a tram clattering down the rusted track, the smell of stale bread and dust mixing in the air. But the tree looked different. He noticed new markings on the bark, fine scratches, like tiny runes or claw marks spiraling upward. When sunlight touched them, they shimmered faintly, like veins under skin. And then he saw her. The sparrow was back, perched low, near one of the carvings. But this time, she wasn't alone. A small nest had appeared between two thick roots, woven with scraps of wire, bits of torn newspaper, and human hair. "God," he whispered. "How?" He crouched down, peering closer. One of the strands of hair was red, vivid, unnatural in the city's dust. And then, as he leaned in, the wind shifted. From somewhere inside the trunk, a faint rhythm began. Tap, 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 like a heartbeat. The sparrow lifted her head and let out a long, sharp note, so piercing it made him wince. The tapping stopped, and for a brief second, Ayan felt something watching him. Not from the street, not from the shadows, but from inside the tree. That night, he sat in his apartment again, city lights bleeding through the blinds. The sparrow had followed him home. She perched on his window ledge, staring in. "All right," he said, half laughing, half afraid. "You win. I'll go back tomorrow. I'll listen." The sparrow blinked. Then she tilted her head, and for the briefest instant, her reflection in the glass wasn't a bird at all, but the faint outline of a child's face. The sparrow waited for him the next morning. When Ayan opened his window, the bird hopped inside as if she'd lived there all along. She perched on the corner of his desk, eyeing the scattered notes and tangled earphones, her tiny claws tapping restlessly on the wood. "Persistent little thing, aren't you?" he murmured. She chirped once, short, sharp, and then hopped closer to the recorder. Ayan hesitated, then pressed play. The voice from last night filled the room again. "You came back." The sparrow froze. Her wings twitched. Then, without warning, she let out a low trill, a sound unlike any ordinary bird song, and Ayan's laptop screen flickered. The waveform of the recording pulsed, lines spiking in rhythm with the bird's call. For 3 long seconds, every device in the room hummed in unison, the computer, the recorder, even the faint buzz of the lamp. It was as if something invisible had passed through them all. Then, silence. Ayan swallowed hard. "What are you?" The sparrow tilted her head, unblinking. The faint hum of the city returned through the window, but something had shifted. The air itself felt charged, as though the world had taken a breath and forgotten to exhale. By midday, Ayan was back at the old district. The streets were brighter now, yet somehow emptier. A thin mist hung between buildings, softening their edges. The tree stood in the center of the courtyard, just as he'd left it, though he could have sworn its roots had stretched further overnight, creeping toward the cracked concrete, swallowing it inch by inch. He set down his recorder, camera, and a small thermal scanner. The sparrow flew ahead of him, circling the trunk twice before vanishing into the hollow at its base. "Fine," he muttered, switching on the scanner. "You lead the way." The screen glowed pale blue. As he traced it along the bark, a faint shape began to emerge, a handprint, small, child-sized, glowing warmer than the wood around it. He touched it. The air thickened. Instantly, his vision blurred, not dark, not light, but something in between, like mist made of memory. The sound of the city faded, replaced by laughter. Children's laughter. And then he saw her. A little girl in a white dress, barefoot, hair streaked with sunlight. She was playing near the tree, a tiny sparrow hopping beside her. Her hands were dirty with soil, her smile wide and free. Ayan. The voice drifted through the fog, soft and near. He turned. "Who are you?" But the girl didn't answer. She ran around the trunk, pressed her small palm against it, and whispered something he couldn't hear. The sparrow fluttered up onto her shoulder. Then everything went white. When he blinked, he was back in the courtyard. His scanner was beeping madly, the readings off the charts. His hand was still on the bark. But now, carved beneath his palm, was the faint outline of that same handprint, a mark that hadn't been there minutes ago. The sparrow emerged from the hollow, feathers ruffled, eyes wide. She chirped frantically, circling his head before landing on the glowing mark. "You were there," he whispered. "You saw her." The sparrow stilled, and in that instant, he knew the girl and the bird weren't separate. They were fragments of the same presence, 2 echoes of something that had never truly left the tree. That night, Ayan returned with his equipment. He set up microphones around the trunk, measured vibrations, and recorded frequencies deep within the wood. The sparrow stayed close, watching every movement, occasionally pecking at the cables like an impatient assistant. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. Nothing. He sat back against the roots, exhaustion creeping into his bones. "I don't even know why I'm doing this," he said aloud. "Maybe I've finally lost it." The sparrow chirped once. "Yeah," he sighed. "You too, huh?" A light drizzle began to fall, soft and steady. The leaves trembled above him, releasing a smell of wet earth and sap, ancient and alive. He closed his eyes for just a moment. When he opened them, the sparrow was gone. Instead, a faint glow seeped from the hollow. He crawled closer. Inside, beneath layers of moss and root, something shimmered, a small glass bead, no bigger than a marble, glowing faintly with a golden light. He reached in, hesitating only once before pulling it free. The moment he touched it, the world tilted. He was standing in a different city, the same one, but older, smaller. The streets were cobbled, lit by gas lamps. The air smelled of smoke and rain. The tree was there too, only younger, vibrant, its leaves glistening in the lamplight. And there she was again, the girl, sitting beneath it, carving something into the bark with a small piece of metal. Her lips moved. "Promise you'll listen, even when I'm gone." A sudden flash, thunder, and Ayan stumbled back. He was in the present again. The bead clutched tight in his hand. His pulse hammered. He looked down at the object, still glowing softly. Inside it, faintly visible, was the image of a sparrow with outstretched wings. The wind rose, bending the branches of the ancient tree until they creaked like bones. "Promise you'll listen." The words echoed again, not from memory this time, from the tree itself. Ayan stared at the recorder. The waveform was spiking wildly, the voice whispering through the static. Then another sound layered over it, the flutter of wings, multiplied 1,000-fold. From the rooftops, the air filled with sparrows, descending like a living storm. They circled the tree, the air trembling with their cries, a symphony of rustling feathers and echoes. Ayan stood frozen in the middle of it, rain soaking his hair, the bead pulsing warm in his fist. And in that moment, he understood. The sparrow wasn't guiding him toward discovery. She was guiding him toward remembrance, the memory of the girl, the promise, the bond between the living and the rooted, the forgotten and the eternal. But beneath the beauty of it all, something darker stirred, a low groan deep within the trunk, as though the tree itself was waking after a long sleep. Ayan looked up. The sparrows were silent now, suspended mid-flight, the rain frozen around him. And from inside the bark, a single golden eye opened, ancient, sorrowful, aware. He gasped. Then the world went dark. The world didn't fall apart when darkness took him. It just stopped moving. Sound drained first, like someone had pressed mute on the universe. Then color. Then weight. Ayan floated somewhere between memory and soil, between dream and decay. He wasn't sure how long he'd been there. Seconds? Centuries? The only thing that anchored him was the pulse beneath his feet. Slow, steady, ancient. When his eyes adjusted, he realized he was inside the tree, not metaphorically, literally. The world around him was made of wood and light. Veins of sap glowed faintly under translucent bark, pulsing like arteries. Whispers ran through them, fragments of laughter, cries, and forgotten voices that had once filled the city above. Ayan turned slowly, breath catching in his throat. The air smelled of rain and old paper. And there, sitting cross-legged on a root, bare feet swinging, was the girl. Her hair was tangled with moss, her skin faintly luminous. The sparrow sat on her shoulder, still and silent. "You found it," she said. Her voice was soft, yet it filled the entire hollow space. His throat felt dry. "I saw you. In the vision." He smiled, but there was sorrow in it. "It wasn't a vision. It's what's left of me." "What happened to you?" The sparrow fluttered its wings once, scattering faint golden dust into the air. The girl watched it drift, eyes unfocused. "I used to live here," she began. "Before the city grew, before the noise. My father was the gardener who planted this tree. I spent every day here, talking to it, feeding the birds. I thought it listened to me. I thought it understood." She looked down at her hands. Then the sickness came. People left. The garden was buried, and the tree, her voice faltered. "The tree remembered me. It took what was left of me so I wouldn't disappear." Ayan's chest tightened. "You mean it kept your spirit?" She nodded. "And the sparrow. She's part of me. The part that still wanders, that still listens. You heard us because the city finally went quiet enough. He stepped closer. Why me? Her eyes lifted to his, clear, hauntingly alive. Because you still believe that trees can speak. You came back when no one else did. The roots beneath them shuddered faintly. The whispers grew louder, not gentle now, but desperate, like hundreds of voices trapped in the wood. Ayan looked around. What's happening? The roots, she whispered. They're dying. The city's digging into them. The ground's poisoned. Once they're gone, I'll be gone too. A deep crack echoed through the hollow, shaking the air. Sap dripped from the walls like tears. You can stop it, she said urgently. You can make them hear. How? Her eyes flicked to the glowing bead still in his hand. That holds every sound this tree has ever remembered. Every laugh, every cry, every heartbeat of this city. Play it. Let them listen. Before he could speak, the roots convulsed. The world tilted. The sparrow shrieked, wings blurring to light, and the girl's figure began to fade. Hurry, Ayan, she cried, before the silence takes me too. He woke on the ground, gasping. Rain pounded the courtyard. The tree loomed above him, cracked and trembling, roots breaking through the concrete. Sirens wailed in the distance. The demolition crew had arrived early. Ayan stumbled to his feet, mud clinging to his hands. The sparrow landed on his shoulder, feathers soaked, but eyes blazing with urgency. The workers shouted from behind the barricades. Hey! You can't be in there. He ignored them. He set the recorder against the trunk and hit play. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Just the hiss of static and the patter of rain. Then, from the recorder, came the sound of wind, soft, slow, followed by the faintest trace of laughter. Children. Bells. The hum of an old streetcar. The chatter of generations long gone. The air thickened. The ground vibrated. And then the tree sang. It wasn't music. It was memory, layered, endless. The sound of life echoing through centuries. The sparrow screamed into the storm, her cry merging with the voices until the whole sky seemed to tremble. The workers froze. People on the street turned. Some dropped their phones. Others just stared. Ayan fell to his knees, rain streaking down his face, as if the city itself were breathing again after years of suffocation. The bark split open, glowing veins spilling golden light into the rain. And in that light, for one impossible moment, he saw her, the little girl, standing beside the tree, hand outstretched. The sparrow perched on her wrist. Thank you, she whispered. And now they'll remember. The light flared, blinding, pure, and then was gone. When Ayan's vision cleared, the courtyard was silent again. The rain had stopped. The tree still stood, but calmer now, roots settled, bark glistening. The air smelled clean, alive. The sparrow was gone. Days later, the demolition order was rescinded. The recordings Ayan had captured went viral, a haunting melody of wind and voices that no one could explain. The city called it the heartbeat of the old tree. Scientists studied it, spiritualists blessed it, and for the first time in decades, people came just to sit beneath its shade. But Ayan knew what it truly was, not a phenomenon, not a mystery, a memory. Every evening, he returned to the courtyard, notebook in hand. He'd sit by the roots, listening to the faint hum that still lingered. And sometimes, when the sun dipped low and the light turned gold, he'd hear the flutter of wings overhead. A single sparrow would land nearby, feathers shimmering like dust caught in twilight. Still watching, huh? He'd whisper. The bird would tilt her head, silent, then vanish into the branches, leaving behind a faint echo, almost too soft to be real. Promise you'll listen. Epilogue. Years later, when Ayan's students asked why he always paused before touching a tree, he'd smile and say, because everything alive remembers. You just have to be quiet long enough to hear it. And in the distance, beneath the city's noise, a sparrow's cry would echo once, soft, fleeting, eternal. Now we know the oldest resident wasn't human at all. It was a witness, a keeper of memories we forgot to honor. Maybe the city never stopped breathing. We just stopped listening.